Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel again. Let's start alternative to practical paper 4 of O-level chemistry, May June 2025, variance 41. We need to attempt all the question, all right, and let's start with the paper. Okay, the student determines the, oh my goodness, the first question is related to solubility. Okay, the student determines the solubility of solid ammonium chloride in water at 60 degrees Celsius. So first of all, we must know what is meant by solubility so that we can apply the concept promptly. Okay, it is defined as the of solute solute is basically the solid. It could be any solid. In this case it is ammonium chloride. Okay, the mass of solute is dissolved in 1 dm cube of water. And water is basically a solvent, so you can even write solvent also. Okay, that's the definition of solubility, which means we need to measure solubility in gram per dm cube. Okay, and also examiner is looking for the solubility of ammonium chloride at 60 degrees Celsius. That indicates the solubility depends on temperature. If temperature increases, solubility also increases. If temperature increases, solubility of solute also increases. This is the short form of increases. Okay, put 100 cm cube of water into the beaker. Since examiner is using 100 cm cube of water, that means according to definition, I have to convert it into dm cube because solubility always determined in 1 dm cube of water. So it's going to be 0.1 dm cube, I believe. So 1 dm cube equals to 1000 cm cube. So when we have 100 cm cube, the volume is going to be 0.1 dm cube. Okay. Heats the water. Now the question is, why are we heating the water? So that we can maintain the temperature of 60 degrees Celsius. Because examiner wants to determine the solubility of ammonium chloride at 60 degrees Celsius. So in order to maintain that particular temperature, we need to heat the water. Because solubility determines at 60 degrees Celsius. So we need to maintain the temperature, and therefore we need what we need to heat the water. Okay. Next, measure the mass of a weighing bottle containing ammonium chloride. Add some of this ammonium chloride to the water. Okay. Stir the mixture to dissolve the solid. Okay. Stir the mixture. In order to stir the mixture, we use clean glass rod. In modern labs, we have magnetic stirrer to dissolve such solids. Okay. Repeat step 4 and 5 until a small amount of undissolved solid remains in the beaker. Okay. Measure the mass of the weighing bottle and unused ammonium chloride. Calculate the mass of ammonium chloride added to the water. State one extra measurement the student must make to calculate the solubility. I've told you that examiner is looking for the solubility of ammonium chloride at 60 degrees Celsius. So in the entire procedure, examiner uh, didn't mention the temperature actually. Okay, which means we need to measure the temperature at solubility at 60 degrees Celsius. So one extra measurement is basically, it's not extra technically. We need to uh, state one other measurement the student must make to calculate the solubility to measure the temperature. Measuring the temperature of water, because we were heating the water, okay? So we need to maintain 60 degrees Celsius. The student results are shown in table 1.1. Okay. Use the results to calculate the solubility of ammonium chloride at 60 degrees Celsius in gram per dm cube. That's the concept I was talking about initially, which we have, mentioned in the form of definition. Okay. So let me take out the mass from these two values. Mass of ammonium chloride. The formula of ammonium chloride is NH4Cl. So it's basically 173.7 minus 115.5. So mass of ammonium chloride in this case is 58.2 gram. We need to find the solubility in gram per dm cube. So we know how much dm cube we have. We have zero point 0.1 dm cube because we were using 100 cm cube of water. We know the mass, we know the dm cube, we can find the solubility. Mass over volume of water in dm cube. Mass is 58.2. Volume of water is basically zero point 0.1 dm cube. So solubility is going to be 582 gram per dm cube. Um, that's a very huge amount of solubility. Next, explain why the method the student uses gives a higher value of the solubility than true value. Hmm. Might be. There are multiple reasons for it. Um, I think we should know. The first possibility is that more amount of water has been evaporated. So if more amount of water has been evaporated, obviously the volume of water decreases and therefore solubility increases. Okay, which is why the value calculated is higher than the true value. So more amount of water has been evaporated. In fact, in step 6, the examiner has told us that a small amount of undissolved solid remain. So it might be possible that this amount uh, is greater than expected. So if this amount of mass is greater than expected, obviously solubility also increases. So there are multiple, uh, you know, uh, reasons for this higher value of solubility. The mass of undissolved solid should be higher, could be higher. The volume of water evaporated must more volume of water must be evaporated. So there are multiple reasons for it. Let me rephrase it properly. During heating, more water is evaporated. So if more water is evaporated, solubility increases. And the second is, in step 6, a small amount of undissolved solid remain. So this increases the mass of solute. In step 6, a small amount of undissolved solid remains. So this portion, so this part of the mass, um, so this undissolved portion, that's the correct undissolved portion, is a part of the total mass. Is part of the total mass. So if this mass increases, obviously solubility also increases. So there are multiple ways you can explain it to the examiner. I've given you both, okay? I don't know the Marquez key. I don't know what sort of explanation examiner is given to this part, but from my experimental knowledge and information, I think if mass increases, solubility increases. If volume decreases, solubility increases. So we can write um, in both ways, okay? Let's move on to the next part of the question. The student repeats the experiment at different temperature. The results are shown in table 1.1. Look at the temperature. If we have 0 degrees Celsius, solubility in gram per dm cube is 300. At 40, it increases to 1480. At 80 degrees Celsius, solubility in gram per dm cube is 660. That indicates that if temperature increases, solubility increases, and if temperature increases, solubility increases, which means reaction is going to be endothermic. All right. Now, examiner is looking for the value of solubility of ammonium chloride at 20 degrees Celsius. So, since at 20 degrees Celsius, the solubility must be greater than 300 and lower than 480. So, what we can do is we can take the average of these two values to get the estimated value. So, it's basically 300 plus 480 divided by 2. So, solubility at 20 degrees Celsius would be, hold on, let me calculate. 300 plus 480 divided by 2, it's going to be 390. So that's the estimated value in gram per dm. Okay. The student also wants to measure the solubility of ammonia. Okay. By the way, ammonia is a gas at RTP. Suggest why method used for ammonium chloride is not suitable for determining the solubility of ammonia. Well, ammonia is a gas. We cannot determine the mass of gas through weighing balance. Okay. Cannot measure the mass of gas on electronic balance. We can measure the volume of gas, but we cannot measure the mass of gas on electronic balance. Okay, so that's the end of first question. Let's move on to the next one. Solid A is impure calcium carbonate. A student determine the number of moles of calcium carbonate in a sample of A. The student places sample of A into the beaker. So this A is basically calcium carbonate, and we put some amount of calcium carbonate in the beaker. Okay, using measure cylinder to add 100 cm cube of 0.25 mole per dm cube hydrochloric acid to the beaker. So what we are doing is that we have calcium carbonate in an impure form into the beaker. We add 100 cm cube of HCl into it, and obviously a reaction takes place. When reaction takes place, you will get calcium chloride, water, and brisk effervescence of carbon dioxide gas is given off. Okay. Stir the mixture. Again, we need to stir the mixture. Why are we stirring the mixture? To mix the content well. And to, yeah, um, mix the content well until no further effervescence is observed. What does it means? If no further effervescence is observed, then it means reaction is finished. And all the reactants has been used up. Calculate the number of moles of HCl added to the beaker. See, guys, that's very straightforward information. We know the volume, we know the concentration, we can find the moles. So 1000 cm cube of HCl contain 0.250 mole. When we have 100 cm cube, The moles would be 100 multiplied by 0.25 divided by 1000. So you will get how many moles? 0.025 moles. Okay. All right. Let's start. Uh, the student rinses a burette with water and then with zero point 0.1 mole per dm cube NaOH. Okay. So first we need to rinse the burette with water and then we need to rinse it with NaOH. So point is, why are we rinsing the burette with NaOH? Rinsing the burette with sodium hydroxide. Why? Why? Because so that we can remove all the water. Um, First, we need to rinse the burette with water and then with NaOH. Obviously, we need to remove the water so that we can prevent the dilution of NaOH. And that's the point. To prevent the dilution of NaOH, we need to remove water. So we need to rinse it with NaOH. Okay. Fill the burette with zero point 0.1 mole per dm cube NaOH. Hold on. Oh, that's the mixture B. By the way, when calcium carbonate and HCl react together and no further effervescence is observed, which means reaction is finished, all the reactants has been used up. Now this is going to be the mixture, okay? And this mixture is represented by B, okay? Add 25 cm³ of B and 5 drops of methyl orange indicator to the conical flask. Usually we use 2 to 3 drops. Here examiner is using 5 drops of methyl orange indicator. Add NaOH from the burette to the conical flask until methyl orange indicator just changes color. Repeat this titration with 2 more times, okay? Show the initial and final burette for titration 1. This is 2.4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is 18.1, okay? Let me write the initial and final burette reading for titration 1. It's basically uh, how much? 2.4 and 18.1. So take out the average values. 18.1 minus 2.4 is going to be 15.7, then 15.2, and then 15.4. Now 15.4 and 15.2, I mean titration 2 and titration 3 are the best titration results because the concordant reading exists in 0.1 cm³ difference of volume. We need to find out the average volume of NaOH. So what we can do is we need to add these two values and divide it by 2. And so we'll get 15.3 cm³. The acid used in A is to prepare mixture B is in excess. Why it must be in excess? Uh, to make sure all the calcium carbonate reacted. During the reaction. Use your answer to be true to calculate the number of moles of 0.1 mole per dm cube NaOH reacts with 25 cm cube of B. Uh, Examiner is saying using your answer to be true. Indirectly, examiner is saying using the average volume and the concentration of NaOH, determine the moles of NaOH. Okay. So what we can do is 1000 cm cube of NaOH contain 0.1 mole. If the average volume is 15.3 cm cube, so it's 15.3 into 0.1 divided by 1000. It's going to be 0.00153 moles. Okay. Calculate the number of moles of NaOH that reacts with 100 cm cube of B. So I've got the moles in 25 cm cube of B. When we have 100 cm cube of B, how many moles in it? So 25.0 cm cube of B contain 0.00153 moles. When we have 100 cm cube of B, how many moles in it? Into 100 divided by 25, it's going to be 0.00612 moles. Okay. Now in part E, the answer to D is equal to the number of moles of HCl that remain in the beaker after the acid reacts with calcium carbonate in the sample of A. The examiner is saying use your answer to A and D. So technically A. So I'm going to use this moles of HCl and I'm going to use this moles of if I'll use these two values, in fact, if I'll subtract these two values, I'd get the number of moles of HCl that reacts with calcium carbonate. Okay, so that's tricky, but not that much difficult. Moles of HCl reacted with calcium carbonate in sample A is basically 0.025 minus 0.00612. So the moles is going to be 0.01 moles. So we can get the round of value. It's 0.0189 moles. Okay. After rounding off the value. Oh, let's move on to the next part of the question. So we have got the moles of HCl from here, 0.0189. The equation for the reaction between hydrochloric acid and calcium carbonate is shown. Calculate the number of moles of calcium carbonate. We have 1:2 ratio according to the equation. This is 1 mole, this is 2 mole. When we have 0.0189, so moles of calcium carbonate would be 0.0189 divided by 2, you will get 9.45 into 10 to the power minus 3 moles. So it has to be like this, 0.00945 moles. Okay. In part A, the mixture of A and acid is stirred until effervescence stops. Give a reason for mixing the reactant by stirring. To dissolve quicker. And to mix the content well. Give a reason for waiting for the effervescence to stop to make sure reaction has been finished. To ensure reaction is finished. To make sure reaction is finished and to make sure all the calcium carbonate reacted. And calcium carbonate technically is the limiting reactant, okay? So this part has multiple answers. You can write any one of them. To make sure calcium carbonate is a limiting reactant. And it is used up. Okay. In part A, measuring cylinder is used to add 100 cm cube of 0.25 mole per dm cube HCl in the beaker. Explain why using the measuring cylinder makes the volume of HCl used is inaccurate. Measuring cylinder, uh, is not that much accurate because its internal diameter is much bigger than burette and pipette, so it's not very much accurate. So measuring cylinder inaccurate because measuring cylinder has higher internal diameter and internal diameter in terms of sciences we can say uh, not have higher resolution, cannot determine accurate volume. Improvement: instead of using measuring cylinder we can use burette. And obviously we need to measure 100 cm cube, so we need to uh, use burette 2 times to measure 100 cm cube. In the next part, the burette is rinsed with water, then with zero point 0.1 mole per dm cube NH. Explain why burette is rinsed with NaOH after rinsing with water. That was the reason. That's the reason. No, no, that's not. That's the reason. To prevent the dilution of NaOH, we need to remove water. To prevent we need to remove water. So we have to rinse the burette with NaOH. Okay. So that's the end of this question. Let's move on to the next one. How many questions we have done? Oh, we have done only two questions. Question number 3. A student tests two aqueous solution W and X. The student add aqueous chlorine. So examiner is adding aqueous chlorine, that is Cl2, to W and concludes that W contains iodine. So that's a very, very important statement. W contains iodine. Describe the observation that the student makes that leads to this conclusion. Explain how this shows that W contains iodines. When we have iodines in W and you treat them with chlorine, so chlorine has a higher reactivity, so it can displace iodide ions into iodine and convert it into chloridine. This is called displacement reaction, also called redox reaction. So when iodine is formed, you will get a brown solution. An observation, brown solution. And this reaction is called redox reaction, which is also called displacement reaction. So we need to write the explanation. Chlorine is more reactive, can displace iodines into iodine. Okay. Hence, it's a displacement reaction. Describe another test and observation that confirms that W contain iodine. Add dilute nitric acid, followed by silver nitrate. Yellow precipitates are formed, and that is going to be your observation. Okay. Don't write in short words. You need to write it in proper terminology. You need to write proper precipitates. Okay. The student does a flame test on W and observe a lilac flame. This lilac flame belongs to potassium ion. Describe how the student does a flame test on W. Okay. First of all, make a solution of W. Use clean, dry glass rod. Next, place glass rod in a solution of W. Place glass rod in a blue Bunsen flame. And blue Bunsen flame has a high temperature, lilac color is seen. Identify W. So now we have potassium ion and we have iodide ions. So when iodide ions and potassium ions combine together to give potassium iodide, so W is going to be potassium iodide. Okay. Let's talk about X. X contain one anion and one cation. Oh my goodness, that's very important. One cation and one anion. The student add aqueous NaOH to X in a test tube, warm the mixture. Why are we warming the mixture? When we add NaOH and we warm the mixture, technically we need to uh, we need to try to determine the presence of ammonium ions, okay? To confirm the presence of ammonium ion. Hold a piece of damp red litmus paper above the test tube. Okay. First thing, white precipitate soluble in excess aqueous NaOH is formed. This statement indicates that zinc ions or aluminum ions may be present because zinc ions and aluminum ions gives white precipitates with few drops, and in excess aqueous NaOH precipitates dissolve to give a colorless solution. Okay. Then litmus paper does not change color, which means ammonia gas is not given off, and that no ammonia gas released, and this shows no ammonium ions. State three conclusions that are made from these observations. Aluminum ion or zinc ions may be present, and no ammonium ions exist. So when we add NaOH and we heat the mixture gently, and there is no litmus test observed, then it means no ammonia gas is released because there will be no ammonium ions exist in this solution or in this salt. The conclusion in D, identify cations that may be present in X. Describe another test that the student does its observation to identify the cation X. Since we have only one cation, so either it could be aluminum or zinc. In order to test this aluminum or zinc की confirmation, I'm going to go for few drops of aqueous ammonia and then excess amount of aqueous ammonia. Add aqueous ammonia until it's in excess. White precipitates of zinc ions turns colorless in excess aqueous ammonia. Similarly, white precipitates of aluminum ions remains insoluble in excess aqueous ammonia. The student adds excess aqueous sodium hydroxide to X, then add a piece of aluminum foil and warm the mixture. When we add piece of aluminum foil and we are heating the mixture, which means we are trying to determine the presence of nitrate ions. So this is going to be the test for nitrate ions. Okay. When nitrate ions is present, ammonia gas is given off, and that's true. And ammonia is an alkaline gas, so it changes damp red litmus paper into blue. Describe what happens to the litmus paper. Damp red litmus paper turns blue. Identify the anion in X nitrate ions, which means this salt X has one cation and one anion. So one cation could be aluminum or zinc, and one anion is nitrate ions. Okay. So that's the end of this question number 3. Let's move on to the next part of the question. Wow. That's my favorite. That's called planning and analysis and evaluation. Q is a mixture of magnesium oxide and barium sulfate. Magnesium oxide is insoluble in water. Okay. But it reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid to make a solution of magnesium chloride. That means magnesium oxide is insoluble in water, but magnesium oxide is soluble in dilute hydrochloric acid. So when magnesium oxide is dissolved in hydrochloric acid, the equation for the reaction is going to be magnesium chloride, that is salt, and water. Okay. Barium sulfate is insoluble in water and does not react with dilute hydrochloric acid. So barium sulfate technically is insoluble in both acid and water. Plan an investigation to obtain a pure magnesium chloride crystals and pure barium sulfate solid from Q. So this is soluble part. Obviously is going to be filtrate. And this is insoluble in both water and HCl. So obviously it will serve as a residue. So in order to separate these two species from the mixture, I'm going to go for the filtration, and for that I need filter paper, I need filter funnel, I need beaker. Okay. All right. Uh, your plan should describe the use of common laboratory apparatus, dilute hydrochloric acid, no other chemicals should be used. Your plan should include apparatus needed. So let me talk about one by one. Apparatus needed. So for filtration, I need filter funnel, then filter paper, okay? And obviously I have to collect the filtrate either in the beaker or in the conical flask. So let's talk about the beaker, okay? We have to take the beaker because uh, we need to put mixture X into this beaker and then add hydrochloric acid into this beaker. As a result of reaction, magnesium chloride is formed as a soluble part and barium sulfate will remain insoluble. We need to collect the filtrate in separate conical flasks. So I'm going to write the conical flask also. Okay. See, we need to get the pure magnesium chloride crystals, which means I'm going to go for the evaporation and crystallization process, and for that I need evaporating dish. To make a saturated solution, I need to heat the mixture, and for that I need Bunsen burner. Okay. And then we need to test the purity of barium sulfate. So to check the purity, I need the melting point apparatus, because purity can only be determined either from its melting point or from its boiling point. So it is solid, which is why I'll go for the melting point. Melting point apparatus. So this is the apparatus needed in order to perform these tests and processes. Now the next is magnesium chloride crystals. Prepare magnesium chloride crystals. Let me write it down in a bullet point. Add mixture Q in a beaker, in a 100 cm cube beaker. Add excess amount of hydrochloric acid into the beaker. Now the main question is why am I adding excess amount of hydrochloric acid? To make sure all the magnesium oxide has been used up. Okay, this is hydrochloric acid. Hold on, hydrochloric hydrochloric acid into the beaker. Okay. Then uh, heat the mixture to evaporate water so that saturated solution is obtained. Cool the saturated solution at RTP to get the crystals of ammonium chloride. Oh, sorry, magnesium chloride. Cool the saturated solution at RTP to get the crystals of magnesium chloride. Okay. Now the next is obtain pure barium sulfate solid. Obtain barium obtain solid barium sulfate. See, in this scenario, when we add excess amount of hydrochloric acid into the beaker, uh, obviously the reaction takes place, um, and because of that reaction, uh, barium sulfate since cannot react with hydrochloric acid, so it will be collected on the filter paper at after adding excess hydrochloric acid. Solid barium sulfate is collected on the filter paper as residue. Obviously, this residue has some traces of magnesium chloride, so we need to remove those traces, and for that, we need to wash the residue with distilled water. Wash the residue with distilled water to remove traces of magnesium chloride. Okay. Um, we can write one more line in that because I didn't mention any filtration technique here. So what we can write here, after adding excess hydrochloric acid, filter the mixture. Filter the mixture. No, it makes more sense. Filter the mixture. Okay. Solid barium sulfate is collected on the filter paper as residue. Yeah, that's correct. Okay. Traces of magnesium chloride. Dry the solid residue onto the filter paper and dry the residue on the filter paper. So we have done all these points. I'm done with this, with this, with this. Now we need to test the barium sulfate is pure. Purity of barium sulfate. Purity of barium sulfate. To test the purity of barium sulfate, I'm going to use the melting point apparatus. So using melting point apparatus, determine the melting point of barium sulfate. और वो प्योर है या नहीं, उसके लिए हम जो ओरिजिनल वैल्यू से कंपेयर करेंगे एंड देन कंपेयर this value with the original one. बाय द वे जरूरी नहीं है कि आप इसको इस तरह के हेडिंग्स डाल डाल के करें. मैंने ये एक मेथड आपको करके दिखाया. मैंने इससे पहले वाले एटीपी में भी ये मेथड अडॉप्ट किया है सो दैट वी कैन डिटरमिन ऑल द बॉइलिंग बुलेट पॉइंट्स ऑफ दिस क्वेश्चन. आप इसको एक फ्लो में भी लिख सकते हैं, बट व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट द फ्लो इट हैज टू बी इन अ स्टेप वाइज ऑर्डर. ओके, you need to make sure that it has to be in a stepwise order. So आप इसको stepwise order में भी लिख सकते हैं. Doesn't make any difference. That's the end of this paper, guys. I hope it makes sense to you. Yeah.